This is Adrian Cronauer, the guy Robin Williams played on the movie Good Morning Vietnam. I just want you to know I always tune in to the News Guardian right here on Fox Radio 910.
And good morning. That is us that Adrian Cronauer is talking about, the News Guardians. I'm Greg.
I'm Chip.
How are you?
I'm great. Looking forward to sharing our interview with, what's his name? With Adrian Cronauer. I'm just kidding.
What?
With Adrian Cronauer. Of course, if you don't know who Adrian Cronauer is, he is the actual person that Robin Williams portrays in the movie Good Morning Vietnam, and a very interesting guy.
Now, just for everyone's, before we start our talk with Adrian, this is to jog everybody's memory. This is what we're talking about.
This is not a test. This is rock and roll. Time to rock it from the Delta to the DMZ. Is that me or does that sound like an Elvis Presley movie? Viva Da Nang. Oh, Viva Da Nang. Da Nang me, why don't they get a rope and hang me? Hey, is it a little too early for being that loud? Hey, too late. It's 0600. What's the O stand for? Oh, my God, it's early.
That movie's a scream the whole way through. It's a very good film. So
it is, and Adrian Cronauer's story provided an excellent mechanism for Robin Williams to do that.
Robin Williams,
that nutty stuff, the stuff that he does. So, well, without any further ado, let's kick on Adrian. Adrian, good morning, and thank you so much for coming on the radio. We're so excited to have you here. Let's just dive in. Since most people are familiar with the movie Good Morning Vietnam, above all, let's talk about that first. How did your story get made into a movie, and how much of the movie is real?
Well, it started off in 1979 when MASH was #1 in the ratings and WKRP in Cincinnati was very popular. And I figured if you put them together, you have Armed Forces Radio. So I did a treatment for a TV sitcom I called Good Morning Vietnam. And in 1979, I guess it was a little too close in time. Nobody believed you could do a comedy about Vietnam. So a couple of years later, still thinking in terms of television, I redid it as an idea for a movie of the week. This time it went into Robin Williams' hands. He read it and said, "Oh, disc jockey, chance to do all my comics shtick. Let's do it, only let's do it as a real movie." So he and his partner bought an option on it, and every year they'd renew the option. And about 4 years later, they called me up one day and said, "Well, we've decided to go into production, but we want to throw away the original and start all over again." So I went out to Hollywood and spent a week telling them everything I could remember happening in Vietnam. And they'd say things like, "Oh, that's a great incident. We'll have to use that in the movie. Of course, we'll have to change it totally." And it went through 5 different versions. And finally, my wife and I are sitting in a screening room in Hollywood watching a rough cut. And I'm saying to myself, son of a gun, they actually made a movie out of this thing. But anybody who's been in the military will tell you, if I did half the things that Robin did in the movie, I'd still be in Leavenworth instead of Virginia. There's a lot of Hollywood exaggeration and outright imagination in it. Let me see. Yes, I was a disc jockey. Yes, I did teach English during my off-duty time. No, I did not have some sergeant major trying to get me killed. And no, I was not thrown out of Vietnam. I stayed for my full 1-year tour. And yes, I did start each program by yelling, "Good morning, Vietnam." And I found when I left Vietnam, that the fellow who took over the morning show, an Army specialist named Kramer Hawes, he took over the show and he kept that same sign on, and it became a tradition with every morning man thereafter. So a lot of times the guy will say, "Oh, I used to listen to you every morning." "Really? When you were there?" "Oh, I was there in 69 and 70. Well, I was there in 65 and 66, as you just said. But what they remember hearing is that good morning, Vietnam.
You've been heavily involved in veteran issues like finding POWs and MIAs. How did that come about, and were you politically active as well?
Well, I had always been, a lot of people have been very surprised to hear it, but I've always been a card-carrying Republican. And I've been very active in the party. And I guess it was the Dole campaign was the first one I got involved in. And I became a national co-chairman of Veterans for Dole, and I became a national vice president of Veterans for Bush. So I'd go spending a lot of my spare time traveling around the country talking about the candidates and what I thought was the proper way to vote. And when the new administration came in, the Bush administration, I was not sure I wanted to get involved in the POW-MIA issue because it's a very complicated issue. But on 9/11, 2001, I was, I guess like everybody in the world, I was spending most of the day watching live feeds and taped replays from New York and the Pentagon. That night I was sitting around talking with my wife, and I said, you know, Gene, if I were maybe 30 years younger, I might go back into uniform. She said, Adrian, has it occurred to you that you might make more of a contribution than you ever could in the Air Force if you take that job at the Pentagon that they're talking about? I thought about it for a while, and as often happens, I said, you know, she's right. So in September of 2001, I went to work as a special assistant to the director of the POW-MIA office. And among the things that I did was to negotiate with the various countries, because countries are sovereign entities, and they have their own ways of doing things, and we can't just walk in and start doing what we want to do. We have to get permission, first of all. So I would negotiate with the people involved, and the Cambodians were hard to deal with. The Vietnamese were a little easier to deal with. But if we came to this country, if we came to this country, and if the Vietnamese came here and went to our people and said, we'd like to look at your classified documents, we wouldn't say no. We'd say hell no. So it's not unusual that the other countries are a little reticent to let us go in and start looking through their classified documents. So what we've been doing is we've been getting somebody who is already retired from their service but still has their classifications of secret or top secret or whatever. And we tell them what we're looking for. We let them go into the documents and look at them and see if there's anything that would lead us to an American. And if so, they can come tell us. That has worked out a little bit better than just walking in and saying, hey, we want to look at your classified documents.
Sure. So what kind of successes did you have in your time in that role?
Oh, we would only get probably 50 or 60 people or sets of remains that are identified and returned to their families per year. But it was a long and complicated process to identify remains.
Well, first of all, I'm sure they're appreciative of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what were you saying?
I said that's 50 or 60 families that I'm sure were deeply indebted for your group doing that.
Oh, yeah, but we wanted to do a lot more than that. And so we would have people go out in a team led by a professional, usually a PhD, in archaeology. And they would find the burial sites and dig up the individuals. Now, we've had some problems when we first started doing this because the other countries, they'd come to us with a box full of bones. And we'd say, no. That's not what we want. We don't want bones. We want identifiable remains. Leave them in the graves. Leave them in the burial grounds. We will come in and find them. Because, say, for example, if a person had been buried very shallowly and just sort of thrown in the grave and covered up with dirt, we know the enemy did that, which tells us something about who that could possibly be. Conversely, if we find that they have been buried deeply, their face up, their hands crossed over their chest, in a respectful manner, then we can pretty well infer that they were buried by their own troops. And again, that tells us a lot of information. If we find anything, sometimes just the sole of a boot or a button from a sweater will tell us a lot about who it was and what they were, what service they were in, whether it was cold or hot or so forth. So those things can be of very much interest. Once the archaeologist has led the team to get the information, then we bring them back to the identification laboratory in Hawaii. And then they have professional anthropologists there who have gone through and taken a set of bones, maybe a half a dozen to a dozen bones, and they lay them out very respectfully, and then they examine them carefully. And it's amazing to watch what they do. For example, somebody might say, well, this was a Caucasian male. He was 5'9" or 10, and he weighed about 150 pounds, and he broke his arm when he was a teenager, his left arm. Boy, does that tell you a lot right there. So you can pretty well determine a lot just from the remains that you find. If you find dog tags, of course, they are golden, but it's rare that we find them. Then we have what's called the Armed Forces or the Air Force laboratory, where they keep examples of all the flight suits and helmets, and probably the best collection anywhere in the world. We have DNA. Up until about 30 or 40 years ago, nobody collected DNA. But now, once you go into the Air Force or the Army or the Navy or the Marines, one of the things they do in basic training is they take a sample of your blood. They examine it, and they put it in. They don't really determine the DNA then, but they put it in a vacuum-sealed piece of aluminum foil with all the identification information on it, and it is kept in a gigantic 3-story refrigerator at minus 30 degrees. Then if I come to you and say, I think this is John Smith, You can then pull John Smith's card, do a DNA analysis, and determine for me whether it is or is not indeed John Smith. So this can be very helpful to us. And one of the things I found very, very rewarding, I guess is the term I would use, is that we would get together with the families. We'd pick a city somewhere in the United States, let's say Detroit, and we rent a hotel ballroom on a Saturday. We invite anybody from about a 250-mile radius or a 300-mile radius who's a member of a family of somebody who's missing. We invite them to come in. We bring in people from our units all over the country, all over the world, in fact. They'd give a PowerPoint presentation and then Q&A as to what we know about how we go about this business of finding and identifying remains. Then, toward the end of the afternoon, we give them a printout of anything we know about their own particular missing loved one. And even if we're not able to give them much by way of new information, the fact that the case is still open, the fact that we still care, is very important.
Now, why did all that come to an end in 2008?
2009, I was a political appointee. So when the new president came in and the old president left, I had to make way for the new president's new people coming in. So at that point, I retired from federal service, and because it was rather difficult to start up my legal practice again, I just decided to retire, and I'm now living in the southwestern part of Virginia, in what is essentially a semi-country or semi-city environment, and loving it. We've got about 4.5 acres, got a little house that we own, and we have deer and wild turkey and raccoons and hummingbirds and all sorts of things. And every once in a while, a black bear will come by and scatter garbage all over the yard because he's looking for something to eat. But I love it.
We've got to go to break. So just hang on with us there, and we'll be right back after this on News Guardian's interview with Adrian Cronauer, the real Adrian Cronauer.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
Well, we just have a couple of minutes before the bottom of the hour, so we're going to hold Mr. Cronauer over until the next half hour and ask some more questions. It's a very interesting story about what he does there with identifying the MIAs, and that's just wild.
Yeah, there's a lot more to Adrian Cronauer's story than yelling into the microphone for a year in Vietnam, for sure.
We'd like to take just a moment, though, to let you know that today's interview is sponsored by Brambleton Frame Shop. If you're unfamiliar with Brambleton Frame Shop, they are right next to where East Coasters just moved onto Brambleton Road. It's almost across the street from Luigi's, like half a block, maybe 100 yards down Brambleton from Brambleton Imports. I'm not sure how to any better identify their location, but they can take care of all your framing needs, and you can contact them at 540-283-9199, and we'd like to thank them for doing such great work on our framing. Once again, Greg broke a piece of artwork on the wall.
You were really good at that, by the way.
and I needed to have it fixed so it could go back up on the office wall. So they're taking care of that, and they do an amazing job. And they are a conservative radio friendly business as well. So if you'd like to not shop at places like George's Flowers because they support the leftists. Well, you can achieve that if you need your framing done by supporting Brambleton Frame Shop.
That's cool.
So there's
they do good work too.
They do great work, and he's a super nice guy. He even put our poster up in the frame shop to let people know about the radio show. So he's helping us out as well. That's totally awesome. You're listening to the News Guardians. If you missed the first part of our interview with Adrian Cronauer, we will have it posted on the website for you to listen to on the internet later today. And don't go away, because when we come back, we will have
much more.
Another half-hour, segment of questions for Adrian Cronauer, the man played by Robin Williams in the movie Good Morning Vietnam. I'm Greg.
I'm Chip.
We'll be right back.
This is not a test. This is rock and roll. Time to rock it from the Delta to the DMZ. Is that me, or does that sound like an Elvis Presley movie? Viva Da Nang. Oh, viva Da Nang. Da Nang me. Why don't they get a rope and hang me? Hey, is it a little too early for being that loud? Hey, too late. It's 0600. What's the O stand for? Oh, my God, it's early.
Hi, we're back with Adrian Cronauer, who Robin Williams played in the movie Good Morning Vietnam. You just heard the clip there. Now, Mr. Cronauer, you've been heavily involved in veterans issues, like finding POWs and MIAs. How did that become such a passion for you?
Well, I feel that it has been for years now a tenet of American policy that we don't leave our wounded and our dead there on the battlefield. We get them back, and we identify them, we return them to their loved ones for an honorable burial in American soil. Now, it used to be, back in the day, that it took a long ocean voyage to return to the United States. It might be a matter of months. Whereas, starting with Vietnam, you could be on the tarmac at Ton Son Nhut Airport, and less than 24 hours later, you could be on the streets of San Francisco. So, it became possible to return the remains to their families in the United States. That was never possible before. But because of that, we don't just give them, the mother or the wife, a gold star to hang in their window and expect them to move on. We now feel it's important to find the remains and identify them. Every war is different. Every country is different. For example, in Vietnam, the soil is very acidic. It has a pH about the same as orange juice. So bones don't last that long. If you do find a bone at all, 30 or 40 years later, or 50 years later, it's going to be a big bone, like the hip bone or something, or a thigh bone. But something as small as your finger bone, it's not going to last, because the acidity in the soil causes the bones to disappear. Now, conversely, in Korea, first of all, the soil is not nearly as acidic, but also the Korean winters are horrendous. It's equivalent, I guess, to putting the body into cold storage for half a year every year. So they last a lot longer. In Vietnam, we found a lot of our remains were from pilots who had flown into a mountainside at Mach 2. In Korea, they were dog faces, foot soldiers who would do their fighting, and we know where they are in North Korea. We know where the burial parts are. The problem is getting in to get them. And right now, the North Koreans won't even let us go in. There for a short while, about 4 or 5 years, we could go in, but we could only go, maximum number of people was, I believe, 26, 28, something like that. So every country is different.
Well, obviously, you've got a lot of knowledge about veterans issues. So on something current topical, what do you think about the VA scandal we have going on right now?
Well, the VA, first of all, this is nothing new. This has been going on for years. Now, people have been having a hard time getting appointments for many, many years. I have been hearing about this. So it's nothing new at the VA. But I must also say that we have found, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I worked with a group called the Vietnam Veterans Institute, which is now moribund for lack of funds. But back in a while back, a few years back when they had the money, they did some research and some surveys, and they found a very, very, very low number of veterans even worked at the Veterans Administration. It was very low. And they're mostly just bureaucrats. And the first rule of bureaucracy is cover your own posterior.
Well, to add to that, are there any particular thoughts you'd like to share about the current situation in Washington?
No, but I started to tell you a little bit more about what we do, and I got off onto another subject. One of the things that we do is to make sure that people don't go missing to begin with. So we make sure that they're well trained in survival and avoidance and escape and resistance and the code of conduct and so forth. We make sure that our people going into the field to do combat are equipped as well as possible with two-way radios and locator beacons and that sort of thing. We want to make sure that the people who go out to look for them are well trained and have the best state-of-the-art equipment. Plus, we want to make sure that if it's a multi-service or even a multi-country effort to find somebody, that everybody's working from the same playbook so that the activities are not counterproductive or at least duplicative. So there's a lot we do that we never even hear about, but we know we do it, and we do it because it's important, and we owe it. They say that the first clients we have are those who are still missing, but in reality, I think our first clients are really the families of the missing, because they care so much and they won't let us try to slough off. They keep our nose to the grindstone.
Well, now, you've probably been interviewed hundreds of times or more. Are there any questions that you wish had been asked but weren't?
Wow. That's a good question, and I don't have an immediate answer for it. I'd have to think about that for a while, because most of the questions I'm asked are what people really want to know about. And, of course, the most asked question is how much of that movie was real. The one thing I didn't mention was that Robin didn't quite do it as I did. First of all, when I would go to, when the movie first came out, when I would go to a college or university or someplace to speak, one of the things I would do is I would read the scene where Cronauer goes on the air for the first time. And I would read it from the original script, and then I'd read it 5 versions later and see how much it had changed. And then I'd show what Robin did on the screen, and it bore no relationship whatsoever to anything that was written down on the paper. What they do essentially is sit him down in a mock-up of a radio studio and say, okay, go, kid. Then about 5 or 10 minutes later, they'd stop the cameras, develop the film, pull out all the good stuff, and use it. But he did not do the opening shot the way it was really done. Because what he did was just, "Good morning, Vietnam." That's not the way it was run. It was done really. In reality, you stress the word good for a very practical reason. Because if you're a morning man, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You are going to oversleep. And when it happens, you come tearing into the station at the very last minute. You don't have any records pulled. You don't have anything queued up. You don't have any tapes put up. You don't even know where your headphones are. And as you walk through the door to the studio, you hear the newsman saying, "That's the latest from the Armed Forces Radio Newsroom. Next news in 1 hour." Well, you've got to do something. So as you try and find your headphones and pull some records and get them queued up, you go, "Good morning, Vietnam." That's the way we really did it.
That's awesome. Before we go, can you share with us how you feel we are doing as a country in general, good or bad?
Well, I do not believe that our country is in very good shape now. As far as the opinion of other countries, they see us as a paper tiger, as a weak sister who draws line and then backs up from it and draws another line and then backs up from it and draws another line. I don't like that. I think as long as there are people who are evil and who want to impose their will on others through force, we are going to have wars and conflicts. Because America is so strong, it has always been the ultimate choice for where to turn to solve these problems and these conflicts and these wars. But if we don't, if other countries do not believe that we are as good as our word, then we are a paper tiger as far as they are concerned. And if we don't do anything to back up our words don't mean anything.
Why do you think that is? I mean, is it a leadership issue, or just what would you do to change that?
Well, I think, first of all, the Republicans have been too adamant in their attitude of, well, it's his turn, let's let him run. No. You have have a political party because you want, I mean, you can have all kinds of great ideas, but they're not worth, as Lyndon Johnson used to say, a bucket of warm spit. They're not worth it if you don't get your hands on the levers of power to implement those policies. And so it'll be interesting to see who the Republicans put up for their candidate next time in 2 years.
At one point, Republicans had control of both the legislative and executive branches of government for 6 straight years. Do you think they succeeded or failed when they had the period of basically total control?
I think that George Bush did a good job, but I wasn't too happy with Dick Cheney. I think it was interesting that he was the person who was supposed to find a vice president. And finally, he turned to Bush and said, "Hey, I just found the perfect person for a vice president. It's me." Come on. Really? No. I just wasn't too happy with Cheney, and nothing in the 8 years that he was vice president happened that changed my opinion.
Mr. Cronauer, we appreciate so much you taking the time to talk with us. We've got to go to break, but I wanted to let you know it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we've got to go to break. News Guardians on Fox Radio 910. We'll be right back.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we are back.
And thanks again to Adrian Cronauer, the real
Adrian Cronauer.
Instead of the fake one that Robin Williams played in the... I'm not surprised that the movie wasn't entirely accurate about Adrian Cronauer's time in Vietnam, but he does tell the story very, very well about the differences.
Well, no, and it's interesting talking to him and hearing the way he speaks and how he talks about things, and thinking that has to have been nothing like what Robin Williams portrayed in that movie.
He didn't sound anything like Robin Williams. He's got this calm, professorial kind of... He's very interesting to listen to, but he just doesn't... He comes across... It's 180 degrees different from Robin Williams' verbal delivery.
Well, and he does have an excellent broadcaster's voice.
Yes, he does.
It's...
We're both jealous.
I'm extremely jealous. That's one thing I've been disappointed about in my 25 years on the radio is I don't have the voice for it. I'm having to overcome not being gifted with the proper broadcaster's voice.
Well, that's the problem. We don't have the voice for radio or the face for television, so we're in trouble.
Once again, we'd like to tell you that today's show, our interview with Adrian Cronauer, the real Adrian Cronauer, was brought to you by Bramilton Frame Shop. For all your framing needs, contact Bramilton Frame Shop. On Bramilton Road, they are right next door to where East Coasters, the bike shop, just moved on Bramilton, which is across the street from Luigi's, 100 yards down Bramilton from Bramilton Imports, the used car lot there where the car wash used to be. Same side of the road as the car lot, and it's they do amazing work. You can call them at 540-283-9199 or just go in. They're open till 5 every day, and I'm told that they have new customer discounts and they guarantee your satisfaction. And they've definitely satisfied us in the work that they've done for us. So we'd like to thank them for helping us bring this broadcast and have Adrian on today. It was wild. Who knew he was a News Guardians listener?
I know, it was fantastic. Also, it's a good weekend to go up on Bent Mountain and have dinner or lunch.
Dude, it's always a good weekend to go to the Bent Mountain Bistro. I don't know what the specials are going to be for this weekend, so check the Facebook page probably later today, and hopefully there'll be something up on there. It's just Bent Mountain Bistro if you're on Facebook, or you can go to the website bentmountainbistro.com and click the Facebook icon, and it'll take you to the Facebook page. But you know why it's always a good time to go to the bistro?
Because everything's better on the mountain.
Everything's better on the mountain. It certainly is.
You know, just before we go, I wanted to share one little story with our listeners. Obama has had a rough couple of weeks. But he's doing well with one group, or actually two groups.
I mean, popular?
He's very popular. There was a study done where they did the Gallup poll. They did a polling of presidential approval based on religious affiliation. So guess which religious group finds President Obama has the highest approval rating for President Obama's job?
It would have to be the Jewish community, right?
No.
No?
No, they're way down the list.
Let's see, Mexicans?
What? Is that a religious group, Greg?
Sorry. All right, Catholics.
No, they have a 44% approval rating.
Let's see.
Which is higher than you think it should be, but still.
Really? Would it happen to have anything to do with his Middle Eastern brethren that he's been helping overthrow legitimate governments?
72% of Muslim Americans think President Obama's doing a bang-up job. And right behind that, at 59%, are those that call themselves non-Christian or atheist. Other non-Christians is the official designation the Gallup uses.
Wow.
They're 59%. So there's a gaping chasm in the perception of President Obama amongst Christians and non-Christians / Muslims.
Well, especially from a president who claimed to be in the pew every Sunday, week after week when he lived in Chicago. I just, how could this possibly be true?
Well, if he went to that church Sunday after Sunday, that would explain a lot.
How popular was he with Mormons?
18%.
18. That's a fascinating number because having been close and worked with many Mormons, I now understand because in their church, citizenship and civics is
very important.
Very, very important. And they teach in their church constitutional issues and community and the real meaning of liberty. So it's no mystery that, actually the mystery is how did they even get those few people to think he's doing a good job?
Well, it is Gallup after all.
Oh, Gallup. Well, that's it. I hope everybody had a great week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks again to Adrian Cronauer for a great interview. We appreciate it. And you can check it out on newsguardians.com.
Yep. Later today, we'll have that up. If you didn't get to hear the whole thing, it was fantastic. Thank you, Adrian. Chip, we'll see you on the flip side.